everyone, welcome to the webinar, Becoming a Master Planner, How the Timeline Drives Lesson Plans. My name is Ruth and I'm a member of the PlanBook Plus team. Today we're going to take 15 minutes, including a short question and answer session after the demonstration. The goal for today's webinar is to familiarize you with the timeline planning tool. Before we begin, I want to go over what you see in your webinar panel. First, we've placed you in listener's mode upon arrival into the webinar. This is to avoid any background noise that might occur. On the webinar site, you'll see two panels, the Share panel, which will share our content, and the Chat panel, which will be used for our question and answer session. At any point during the presentation, please feel free to use our moderated chat to ask any questions that you may have. We'll either answer your question immediately, or we'll let you know that it's going to be addressed later in the presentation. Now let's go over the agenda for today's webinar. First, we're going to discuss what puts the plus in PlanBook Plus. Then we're going to go into our Timeline Advanced Planning feature, and we're going to talk about the basics of our timeline, and then we'll go into how to organize your lessons into units. Then we'll go over some more advanced features of our timeline planning tool. Now, what puts the plus in PlanBook Plus? PlanBook Plus is a full-featured online lesson planner. It was designed by educators, and it's going to allow you to map your lessons to preloaded state standards and add activities and resources. We have a completely customizable lesson plan template using our custom element designer. We also provide you with multiple views to create a more individualized planning experience. The calendar view allows you to add lessons daily and use as a guide for you throughout your school day. The timeline view is unique to PlanBook Plus and is a quick and easy way to scope and sequence your course for long-term planning. The weekly planner is going to give you your weekly plans at a glance to view and edit on one page. Now let's get into the system to see a more in-depth look at our timeline. Let's start with the basics of the timeline. The timeline is a long-term planning tool within PlanBook Plus. It allows you to easily outline a course and organize your lessons, quickly adding lessons and then filling in the details later. In the timeline, there are two different sides to the screen. There is the outline side and the timeline side. Let's start by adding some items or lessons to your outline. You can see there are two different add buttons at the top of the screen. There is an add item below button and an add sub item button. Thinking about an outline and the different levels of an outline, when you're adding an item, it will add a lesson at the highest level, or if you highlight an item first, clicking this button will add a lesson at the same level as the highlighted items. The Add Sub-Item Below button will add it below and indent it under that selected lesson. When you add an item below another lesson, the top lesson becomes a group, and then inside the group are the lessons. Let's add a few basic lessons to our plan book. I'm going to click on the Add Item Below button a few times to add a few lessons. Now let's rename those lessons. You can do that simply by double-clicking on the name, type the name of your lesson, and click Enter. You can do that as you add your lessons, or after you've added several, you can go back and rename those. And you'll notice on our timeline screen, as we've added lessons, our lessons are consecutively being displayed on our timeline. Now we have a bunch of lessons. Let's organize them a little further by putting them into groups or units. I'm going to create another item underneath at the same level. I'm going to name that item Unit 1. And then all you have to do is drag your items into that group. Simply drag the first item you want and drop it onto the unit name when you see the plus icon. Keep doing this until all your lessons are inside the unit that they belong in. If many of you have existing lessons, this is what you're going to do in order to group them together. But if you're starting an outline from scratch, you can create the units when you're creating the lessons. So I'm going to start by creating a second unit from scratch. I'm going to add some items into that unit for you. I'm going to highlight Unit 1 because I want an item to be at the same level as that. So I'm going to click Add Item below, and it'll add an item at the same level as Unit 1. So now let's rename that to Unit 2. Now let me add a few lessons under that unit. I'm going to start by clicking Add Sub-Item, and now my sub-item is highlighted, so I can click the Add Item Below button as many times as I need to add the number of lessons below that unit. Now that we've added items, let's rename some of them. Remember, to rename, you double-click on the item, type the name, and click Enter. If you want to group these lessons even further, you can separate them by semester, quarter, or month. Let me create another item, and now I'm going to name that item Quarter 1. So now you can drag your entire Unit 1 grouping into Quarter 1. You'll do the same with Unit 2. And now when you expand, you can see that there are units, subunits, and then lessons. Now that we have a general outline, let me go in and show you some additional features in our timeline tool. Let's go over how to delete and rearrange your lessons. We're going to do that using our outline side of our screen. To rearrange, you can simply drag your item to the new location. There will be a different icon displayed to let you know where it will go, top, middle, or below. Remember, the plus icon is what's going to create a group. To delete items that you no longer need, you can highlight and click Delete, or you can click the X in the timeline side of your screen. If you've deleted items and you'd like to restore those items can be found under the Restore Items button at the top of the screen. You can see our units and durations are calculated. Each lesson will default to 1 day. If you would like to extend a day, simply drag the end of your lesson in the timeline and highlight the number of days on the timeline that you would like to extend that lesson to. If you would like to overlap lessons on your timeline, you can simply drag the second lesson backwards to overlap. Overlapping is what we call a fixed start date, and you'll see that by looking at the lock icon next to your item. If for some reason you drag it by mistake, you can click that lock icon and it'll unlock it and push everything back to where it goes in your timeline. An example of using our fixed start date would be as if one lesson extends beyond one class period, but you will begin the next lesson during that same class period as well. You can overlap those and extend to cover those 2 lessons over 3 days. We also have a copy feature built into our timeline, and this is available for you if you want to copy items from one plan book to another, but it's also available to our advanced planners for our teacher sharing. So if somebody shares a plan book with you, then you can copy items down to your plan book. You'd simply just highlight the unit or lessons that you'd like to copy and click on that copy button and follow those steps. You can find more information on our copy wizard using our support portal at support.planbookplus.com. The last thing I wanted to go over is how to add the details to your lessons. We've added the outline, and now when you're ready to add your lesson plan elements, resources, and standards, all you have to do is click on the details link next to each lesson. That's going to take you to your lesson plan edit, where you can enter all of that information. Now that wraps up our demonstration portion of our advanced timeline planning tool. We're going to go over future enhancements and user feedback, and also have a short question and answer session. We are really excited about some upcoming features we are developing for PlanBook Plus coming in the next few months, but we want to hear from you. Our system was designed by educators, and we look for feedback from our users for upcoming enhancements. Contact our support department to let us know what you would like to see in PlanBook Plus. That wraps up our presentation for today. We wanted to thank you for attending our webinar. We're going to stick around and open up our moderated chat for question and answer. While we're waiting for our question and answer session to begin, I'm going to leave up our PlanBook Plus support information. We wanted to thank you again for participating in our PlanBook Plus webinar. We know you'll enjoy your experience with PlanBook Plus. You can reach us on support at our email address, support@planbookplus.com. You can visit our support portal at support.planbookplus.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.